I believed all the propaganda about cannabis. And then 6 years ago, well, actually 8 years ago now, my brother-in-law was suddenly diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Oh.
Never a smoker. He has 2 kids in high school and then given 2 to 5 years to live. So can you imagine the panic that ensues in your family? They're in California, and luckily they're fortunate enough to be able to go to the top pulmonary specialists and researchers in lung cancer. And one of them at USC, a female clinician, said, well, we'll look at cannabis, but it's last-ditch effort. And I said, let me look into the validity of it. I looked into the typical science platforms that any clinician will go to, PubMed, Science Direct, anything that, anyone would go into and look for the actual evidence. And when I saw the real evidence, I was not only surprised, but actually angry that me as a clinician here and a practitioner for 28 years was not told that, hey, there's some hope. This is real medicine.
Welcome to the Clear Pod. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We have Katherine Golden from Leaf411, and this is a really special episode. If you were watching High Science, we just aired episode 4, which was all about medical cannabis. And I was thinking about you through the entire episode because they talk a lot about there's not really a way to dose it, and people don't really know. If you go to a dispensary, they can't give you medical advice.
Correct. They're not supposed to. Yes.
Right. I mean, yes, they're not supposed to because they're not medical professionals.
Correct.
But people are using cannabis for medical purposes. So, and your company has kind of has found a way to bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your company?
Sure. So, well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is exciting. And I created Leaf411. Gosh, now it's been 6 years. And it all, it's funny because every time you talk to somebody who's in this industry, it typically comes from something personal that has happened to them. And the same with me. So, I've been a nurse for 28 years and, I believed all the propaganda about cannabis. It didn't work for me in my youth, just made me paranoid. Whenever I tried it, I believed this, everything about it, the stigma, and that, there was no medicinal use for it. So even when it was on the ballot here in Colorado, I voted against it because I'm like, that stuff is just for fun, and doesn't have any other value to that. And then 6 years ago, well, actually 8 years ago now, my brother-in-law was suddenly diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Oh.
Never a smoker. He has 2 kids in high school and then given 2 to 5 years to live. So can you imagine the panic that ensues in your family?
Yeah.
So they're in California, and luckily they're fortunate enough to be able to go to the top pulmonary specialists and researchers in lung cancer. And one of them at USC, a female clinician, said, well, we'll look at cannabis, but it's last-ditch effort. And I said, you know what? Let me take that off my sister's shoulders because it's huge here in Colorado, and I don't know why. Why is it so big? And then I said, let me look into the validity of it. I looked into the typical science platforms that any clinician will go to, PubMed, Science Direct, anything that, anyone would go into and look for the actual evidence. And when I saw the real evidence, I was not only surprised, but actually angry that me as a clinician here and a practitioner for 28 years was not told that, hey, there's some hope. This is real medicine. So then back then, 8 years ago, you had to self-educate. And so I started going and learning as much as I could, and then got a job working as the first cannabis nurse manager at a functional medicine practice, because that's where you can usually go, is, a specialty that looks at the person as a whole and looks at the root cause versus traditional healthcare right now, where we kind of put a Band-Aid over it. So then I started there, and then I noticed that people, even in the affluent city of Boulder, were struggling to afford the out-of-pocket cost to even know if they even needed cannabis. So gosh, I have to pay $150 just to sit down with a physician and say, can I even use cannabis? And so that's where I thought, you know what, I'm going to start a free hotline that's staffed by licensed medical professionals that are experts in cannabis. And that's where it started. So it's grown since then, where we have programs where we do outreach in communities, and then now really trying to get the word out, because we're a national organization, that we are that middle person. So, I was just talking to someone on the phone right now and saying, gosh, it's mind-boggling how you would never go to, Rite Aid or CVS and go up to the pharmacy counter and ask the cashier, well, what's my dose for my, medicine here? What would you think I should buy for my diabetes or my high blood pressure? You want to go to someone who's clinically trained. So, to have that available, I think is the word we need to get out. So that's what we've been doing for almost 6 years now.
That is just beautiful and gives me goosebumps when you said it actually made you angry
Mhm.
that this information is out there and it's so hard to find.
Yes.
And it's definitely not the loudest voice that's out there right now. And in High Science, in the episode from yesterday, one of the things, there was a veteran on there talking
Mhm.
about how like the system was failing him.
Yeah.
The medications they were offering him were not they were not good for him. And same thing, when he found cannabis, he was angry. Like, this isn't fair. Why are they, why has
Right.
this, happened for so long this way? So it's beautiful. And it's just absolutely remarkable that you've put this together and it's a free service.
Yeah, so we have the free hotline and that will always be free. We don't turn anyone away, no matter who you are and your ability to donate. So we do have a service that we have a 30-minute one-on-one nurse guidance call that we ask for a $25 donation. But if someone can't afford that, no problem. So we have people like The Clear and then people like brands, very few out there that will say, you know what, I support cannabis public education, so I'm going to give to you monthly so you can pay for some of those calls. And that's how we get to cover those calls from the fantastic brands that actually see the value in an educated consumer.
Right.
Because that's what we also say. It's like, gosh, don't you want customers coming in that won't have buyer's remorse? Or just pick the wrong parts of the plant, the wrong route. And if they just had guidance before they went in, then they would be buying their medicine all the time.
Right.
So
Absolutely. So everybody helps everybody.
right,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah. No, that's great. And you're so passionate about it and like a medical professional, which I
Yes.
think just gives it so much more weight. When I had little kids, there's the like ask a nurse hotline, and that just saved so many times of I don't know what to do. And like having that reliability of medical professionals is just fantastic. And I actually get questions a lot when I'm talking to new consumers about like, oh, I'm on this medication.
Right.
I'm on blood pressure medication. Is that going to be a problem? And it was something I'd never thought of before. And so this is another great resource.
Yeah, I think a really hot topic right now is drug to drug interactions. People are concerned, like, can I use CBD or THC with the pharmaceuticals that I have? And yes, you can. And that's, I really like to take the weight off their shoulder by giving them the evidence of how safe this plant is. And that's what's, I think, really astonishing to a lot of people when you tell them the safety profile of cannabis. And you also show the evidence. So that's the beauty about coming to an organization that has licensed medical professionals, because we can only educate by the evidence that's out there. And just in the last decade, if you just take one platform like PubMed, over 30,000 pieces of literature about cannabis in just the last 10 years. So when someone repeats that misinformation that there's not enough science, you hear that. That's just from people, I think, being a little lazy and not wanting to look into that. Well, actually, there's a lot of science.
Right.
A lot can be animal and lab model, but there's also a lot of human studies that are coming out now.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. I'd love to dig in a little bit deeper to the medication to medication interaction because we chatted about that before, and I was fascinated by pretty much everything is okay, more or less. Like can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So in the science or medical world, you'll hear, there's contraindications, meaning there's a medication you cannot use. Cannabis is not like that. There's cautions to it, but every single time it's dose dependent, just like anything else. And that's kind of what we try to help the consumer understand is that you can look at cannabis like you do with your other medications. It's always depending on the dose that you take. So with cannabis, you have to take, well, one of the big physicians, the world renowned Dr. Dustin Sulak, will say, which I love and I repeat, saying, really when you're looking into triple digit numbers daily, if you're using a certain cannabinoid like CBD in the triple digits, so say 100 milligrams a day, then you really need to start looking at the drug to drug interactions. And if there is an interaction, that's still okay. You just have to learn when to take it, if it needs to be time different. And then usually people aren't taking that large of amounts though.
Right.
So with people, mostly an adult use customer coming in and buying something, out of the dispensary, those over the counter servings are not going to cause a drug to drug interaction. They need hundreds of milligrams, usually in those 90, 100 milligrams a day of CBD, something like that, to say, okay, now we need to look at your lab levels. And that's all it is looking at your lab levels and making sure that the medication you're taking that's helping you is still at the right serum level in your blood. So.
Right. So that's the important part. Is it's not that if you take CBD that the interaction is going to be bad. It's just the medication, the other prescription that you're taking may not be as effective.
Right. It's either going to not allow it to be as effective or it's going to make it be more effective. And so, which it can do, which is why we've seen it work so well with chemotherapy,
Right.
because it can actually make it work more effective. So therefore, your prescriber then doesn't even need to prescribe so much of that other medication that's causing a lot of side effects. So that's how beautiful cannabis can be integrated into your regimen, because it can allow your prescribing physician to actually dial down some of your narcotics, some of your, therapy that causes side effects at a higher amount. So now you have a plant that you can actually use to your benefit.
I love that. And you were national, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's anybody can call anywhere and they can ask questions.
Yeah, we've had international calls too.
Wow, that's
Oh, yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's incredible. And this has just been in the last 8 years, you said?
Well, I've been in cannabis space for 8 years, but launched it 5 years ago. So we're going into our 6th year of the hotline being launched. But even a year before that, I went to all the regulating bodies here in Colorado and I said, hey, okay, if I'm going to launch this nonprofit, I want to make sure the regulating bodies, will allow my marketing material in a dispensary or things like that. And it took a year to get the, blessing, and which we did. And then we were off and running.
That's the other thing about cannabis that I don't think a lot of people realize is that even talking about it can get you flagged.
Yes.
So the podcast, actually the first 2 episodes that I did, they were kicked back to us and they said, nope, can't do this. You use the word cannabis too much. It's crazy.
It is, and it's heartbreaking because even a company like, Stripe, we get denied from them, and it's like, well, we don't touch the plant, we just educate, and yet because we have the word cannabis on our website, they're like, nope, sorry, next time. So, and that's the heartache. Even with being a nonprofit, we go to ask for grants. That's our lifeblood, is going to foundations and asking for grants. But you have companies that will say, well, I don't know, because our other supporters may not be on board with cannabis, so we can't rock the boat, So we, as a cannabis nonprofit, we have a really tough time finding funding.
Yeah, it's just,
And even though we don't touch the plant.
right. No, I mean, not at all. You're not selling
Nope.
anything. You were just providing
education.
educational information.
Licensed medical professionals too.
I mean, you would think that would be as easy and as safe as it could get. I mean, especially if you think about any other drug, right?
Mhm.
Like companies who have done, any other addiction research and might use the word heroin or something, and that's fine, and they can get grants for research and things like that. But just it's really a bizarre situation we're in. But I love the fact that you're overcome all these obstacles and it's continuing to grow and business is going well, and just
Yeah, we year to year, we're always surprised, like, oh, here we go again. We're making it through. And I think it's because it's such a rewarding organization, because I talk to people every single day. I mean, we have calls every day. I was looking at the average, and on average, we have about 100 calls a month coming in, people just needing information. And it grows. It ebbs and flows. But I mean, that's a lot of people that we can touch to say that some just want to know, will this be good for my grandma, or, for even me? We have people that call us about everything under the sun to do with cannabis, whether they're growing at home or they want to, look at a different part of the plant. And most of it is fear-based. They're still trying to fight that stigma that there's some scariness to cannabis. and we try to equate it to pharmaceuticals. Well, you a lot of, like you were saying before, a lot of these prescriptions are used off label. So there's no research to say, oh, it's good for this, condition. But, if you're a clinician, you use it off label. It's like,
Right.
well, cannabis is the same, you're using it, but at least there's research to show that it does interact with our bodily systems in a way that can benefit some of those symptoms you're experiencing.
Yeah, no, and you said how many calls are you getting on average?
We get anywhere. It's about 100 that we're looking at right now. But it's gone up to 300 a month that we would be getting every month.
And that's incredible because I feel like if you can get the message out there, if more people knew about it, I
Right.
think it would just grow exponentially.
It would, and the beautiful thing is we have so many licensed professionals that have trained in cannabis. So, you have your American Nurses Association that just declared it an official specialty last year.
Yeah.
So now every nurse, and you're talking about, I think there's 5 million nurses that are all across the country that should know about cannabis therapeutics, according to our, regulating body that says you need to know this now. It's so prevalent. So, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So
That's fantastic. I really hope that listeners, if they're looking for you, how do they find you?
they can go to leaf411.org. I mean, that's the best place because you'll see our homepage. Anyone can just touch a button and schedule a call with us. And then we also have chat. So we have people that come through on our chat. And then we have our hotline, 844 Leaf 411. We love guidance calls, scheduled guidance calls. That's where we can ask for a donation, but that's also where we can meet people on their schedule. When we first started this, I had someone, which we'll always remember, call me from their farm, but out in the fields because that's where he could get reception. So that's why we started it to make it easily accessible, both, accessible financially, so you don't have to have any money to call us, and also accessible by phone. A lot of people said, well, you should have started with an app. And I said, yeah, but I want those people that are out in rural, farmlands, wherever they are, and can only reach us by phone.
Yeah.
So
Well, or like my mom, who
right.
she will only call you. If there's an app involved, she's not going
They're
to
like,
it.
no
So that's
way.
great. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Do you want to talk about the demographic that calls in the most?
Yeah, what we noticed right away when we started was 60% of our callers were over the age of 55. So these are the consumers that are too scared to go into dispensaries. I think they find them very intimidating.
Yeah.
And then they have lots of questions about what we talked about earlier, drug to drug interactions, and just fighting the stigma, trying to really feel more comfortable that this is safe to use, because they've heard all their lives that it's a dangerous plant.
Mhm.
So I think that that's been really heartwarming to hear. And then, once you get into hearing from them, a lot of people are taking care of their loved ones at home. So, for example, we're working with dementia patients right now, and it's fascinating that 75% of dementia patients are cared for at home. So you have people in this demographic that are desperate for cannabis, that are trying to figure out how to incorporate this because they don't want their loved ones that they have to take care of at home on these pharmaceuticals that are causing side effects.
Right.
So they want cannabis to try to see, gosh, I love this when I used it in the 70s. I hear that a lot.
Right.
I loved it back then, but can I really use it as a medicine now? And it's so wonderful that we get to explain to them, show them the evidence, and really ease their mind that yes, you can incorporate it because there are lower milligrams
Right.
of what you can incorporate. So you don't have to be high. And that's what a lot of people in that age group will say, well, I don't want to be high. And even outside of that age group, actually, a lot of people in their 30s and 40s will come to us saying, I want to start using it as a supplement because I hear there's so many great benefits, like it's an antioxidant and it's a neuroprotectant, all of these wonderful benefits to it, but I don't want to be high all day. I got to work, I got kids, I got stuff to do. And we're like, that's what we explain most of all, is that you can get the, medical benefit from it without being impaired.
Right.
And that's what people are like, oh, I can? Okay, great. But we also need to guide you on what those non-impairing either parts of the plant are, and then the dosing that goes along with that.
Right. Absolutely. No, that's so important. Yeah, Leaf 411 offers such a great service of being able to reach these demographics that, like you said, are hard to get to, are curious. They're the kind of curious. They wanna know. But at the same time, going into a dispensary is not only maybe like a little nerve-wracking to try, but also it's not the right help
Right.
necessarily, right? Like going and talking to a bud tender who, like you said, is yes, they have a lot of product knowledge, but not necessarily with the medical side of it, or, they're not medical professionals. And so the questions they may want to ask, they might be a little shy.
Right. Right. And then unfortunately, they'll get steered in the wrong direction when we could steer them in the right direction. And what we like a lot now is that there's online menus. So I can talk to someone on the phone. I can pull up the online menu of the dispensary near them, and then I just guide them. I say, okay, this is what you need for these conditions you want to see if there's any benefit. So it's really nice in that way. I say, use their online menu. So then you can put it in the cart and then you can walk in and you don't have to get distracted because it is once you become comfortable, going in a dispensary is kind of like a kid in a candy store. You're like looking all around and you've got this beautiful packaging and you've got all these wonderful products, but you have no idea what they're good for.
Right.
And then you're looking at this um person that maybe you don't relate to because they're younger or they're not trying to treat maybe a symptom that you're feeling and you don't want to share that with them. So it's good to go in already armed with knowledge and feel confident about what you're going to buy and it's already there.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. So many different brands, so many
Mhm.
options, and dispensary is very, very overwhelming. So that's a great point. I'm curious from my side personally, and I don't know if we can dig into this at all, but the Clear Pod is kind of about wellness and that kind of thing. And I'm definitely on this wellness adventure. Not only do I want to have a healthy lifestyle, but the whole like anti-aging thing and like getting rid of inflammation in the body and all that stuff that you hear. Do you have any tips or tricks or anything that we should be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, you can see cannabis used in all kinds of different areas, especially if you do any kind of fitness or exercise, like you said, to keep, for your wellness. I think it's a beautiful supplement. And you can use it as a supplement because of its anti inflammatory properties. You have just that from daily life, and especially if you exercise too. You want to really recover well. So it's a great way to start that recovery as well. And then just using it for your own, like I said, neuroprotectant, protecting your brain as it's aging. So you want to start doing that early on. And there's certain parts of the plant and even minor parts of the plant that we're starting to see being more important for that. And the major CBD, THC, are always at top of the line trying to think, how can we use these to better our health? In as a daily supplement that we can use without that impairment. And you can absolutely do that. And I think everyone should see where they can, incorporate it. And then you get people like we were talking about before. Most people use CBD, and I warn them, you're not going to feel different right away, like when you take it, especially if someone's looking for something that calms their anxiety.
Mm,
People think, oh, I'm going to take it and it's going to feel like a Xanax or a Valium. I'm just going to go woof and just kind of melt into the chair. You Once you start taking it, you don't know why you feel so good, but you feel more of a balance to your body. And that's what cannabis does. So it's not those heavy hitting, like we call anxiolytics that just, those prescription ones that are just going to kind of numb you instantly. What cannabis does is it just brings a balance to your body daily. And so that way you can manage your stress and you can manage your anxiety better. Yeah, you still have a clear mind. I mean, that's kind of what everybody's looking for.
right, absolutely. So, and can we dig into that a little bit? Because you're saying like you don't feel it, but that's specifically with CBD.
Mhm.
So that would be maybe a product that doesn't have THC because that's the part of the plant that gets you high. Is that right?
Yeah, that one is, impairing. We call that one's I
Okay.
impairing. It's, so that part of the plant, but it's also dose dependent. So you
Mm,
can take 2 milligrams of THC and not even feel it, but you can still get the medical benefit from it.
nice.
Some people can even take 5 milligrams and not really feel it too much or just have a little bit of an awakening, more alert. A lot of people get very creative when they take THC
Huh.
at low doses. So it's wonderful for that. It kind of inspires a creativity. So every human tolerates it differently. So that's why you need to, like the industry says, start low
Right.
and increase slowly, because you could be one of those outliers.
Yeah.
So for you, 2 milligrams could be nothing, and you would need to take 5 or 10. And to someone else, 2 milligrams can be impairing.
Yeah.
So everyone is very different. And that's why what we say, always start even lower than you think, because it's okay if you don't feel anything for that dose. At least you know you're not one of those very outliers that even at that low a dose, you felt some impairment.
Right.
If that's not what you're looking for. But also, we also explain that euphoria is great. There's no fear. There's a lot of fear of euphoria, and that's what everybody's afraid of, is that impairment that comes. But we say, that euphoria is actually beneficial for a PTSD patient, that is undergoing or chronic pain. They're in this huge cycle of never-ending pain. So imagine being able to take something that disconnects that for a moment,
Mhm.
gives you a little bit of lift and euphoria. I mean, there's no harm in that as long as you're using it responsibly.
Right.
So all of it comes with responsible use, the correct dosage for what you're looking for. And then, if people want to use it for euphoria after a long day of work, stressful day, and actually for sleep, THC is beautiful because it does affect that short-term memory. So when people use it for PTSD, it stops those nightmares. And sometimes I tell people, gosh, if say you had a terrible day, you just had something awful at work happen, and you're like, how am I going to go to sleep now? And my brain is just constantly chatting about what I experienced. Taking a little bit of THC, you can take it in smaller doses, stops that, and CBD can stop that night chatter. So it's beautiful. And that's how people are getting better sleep.
That's amazing. That's incredible. That's definitely something I struggle with all the time. Like, how do you turn it off? But the thing that's so nice about it is I think that maybe like a glass of wine has been used. Like, that's kind of the thing now is like
Yes.
you come home, you had a hard day at work, you have a glass of wine, you unwind. But the wine is so much more damaging in terms of like the sugar to your body and like especially if you work out all the time, you're trying like you're going backwards. Like I went and I
Right.
worked out and then but now I'm drinking alcohol, and so it's a little harder on your system. But this is a great way of you can still have that kind of relief, that unwinding and the quieting of the
Yes.
mind, but it's not hitting your system as hard.
Right. There's a medicinal benefit to it versus alcohol that can actually interrupt your sleep. People think, oh, if I just drink until I pass out, that's a good sleep. And it's like, well, you're not really getting the quality sleep that you should be.
Right.
Where cannabis you can.
Oh, that's I see, I didn't know that either. So, okay, all right, that was even better. Oh, that's fantastic. So sleep, I think, is probably a really, really big one. Anti-inflammatory. I didn't know about the neuroprotection.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. That's I think affects everybody. We should all be protecting our brains.
Yes.
What other big things do you talk to people about?
Oh boy. Well, we noticed early on, and this was heartbreaking, is that from all the calls we took across the country, the number one topic is pain. People are in so much physical pain and emotional pain, and that's what's hard to hear. So those are the things that we like to talk to people about. Okay, tell me about your pain, and really focusing on one symptom they're experiencing, and try to guide them on how to use the plant correctly for that. Another big topic we hear is cancer. Unfortunately, there's lots of different varieties of cancer. Talking to people about that, just symptom management. And then if they want to talk about treating the disease and seeing if they can get a tumor reduction, then they need an advanced practice clinician that they can really talk to. It's so fascinating how many people don't realize that there are trained nurse practitioners and MDs that have specific cannabis training all over the country. You
Oh,
can actually go to their practice and become a patient. And then you have that weight off your shoulders that you're trying to figure out which product to use. They're just telling you what to use
right.
and helping you where to buy it, because usually they're in the same state, if you're visiting them. So that's a lot of information that I think people still don't realize, is how many trained clinicians there are in cannabis that they can reach.
Yeah, no, I actually didn't know that. So that's has got to be, especially if you're dealing with something like cancer, it's got to be so scary. And then it feels very experimental of I want to add cannabis into my regime to, help, but it doesn't feel like anybody really knows, but they do. The information just isn't out there.
Right, right. And especially, with cancers, there's a lot of symptoms that you want to treat that low doses will help. So there's not going to be drug to drug interactions. You don't have to worry about it interacting with your chemotherapy because you're taking such a low dose just to help you sleep through some of the stresses that cancer is bringing you, and the pain associated with it or discomfort.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, it's heavy, it's a lot, but it's really remarkable to me how much it's just the message is not out there. Like this information is available, and I think that's the best part about your company is that it's available. You can call, get a hold of you, and get some really good information.
Right. And what we would appreciate is anybody sharing what we put on social media. I mean, social media is wonderful. We just don't have the staff power to be on our social media all the time.
Right.
So if anyone can help us by sharing that, so that way more people learn about our service. And we're a nonprofit. We are a public service. We offer this free and reduced service to anyone in the country, so, send your family, friends, everybody. So that way, word of mouth can grow and people know that this is available to us. So anyway, anybody wants to share Leaf411.org, that's our handle on Instagram, on X, and we're on LinkedIn, and we're on Facebook. Just find us and share us and let everyone know that, we're here and we're here to help.
I love that. That's great. Maybe I'll Darby, who works behind the scenes here, I'll lend her to you for a little bit. She'll boost those
Right.
those posts and likes. I love that. That's fantastic. Where do you see like the next 5 years? What do you have in front of you?
Yeah, well, I think what's going to be interesting is finding out if we go Schedule 3. I think that it would be such a huge help, and I know a lot of people wanna, of course, we'd rather have it descheduled, but even some movement in that direction, so that way the thing we hear the most is a lot of people easily pushing it aside saying, "Well, it's Schedule 1, it's illegal," but if it was moved to Schedule 3, then you have all the facilities, the hospitals that can no longer say, "Oh, it's Schedule 1, it's illegal, there's no medicinal value to it." You can't say that anymore. So, I think just moving it to Schedule 3 would open up a lot of doors, and now more physicians would talk to more patients about it and be more open to it. So in the next 5 years, I'm hoping to see legislation change. I'm hoping to see more doors open that way. So that way patients in the traditional setting can start coming over and saying, okay, it's safe to integrate cannabis now.
Right.
Yeah. And now I have the resources to do it. So in the next 5 years, I hope there's more awareness to that. But legislation would help.
Yeah.
That's a huge one.
Yeah. So everybody vote. Everybody call your state representatives. I don't know what we need to do, but like get on the horn about that. We're absolutely in the same position that it's just everybody thinks it's not, because of the legality, you could get grants so much more easily.
I would be able to get grants because right now, companies that touch the plant can't write off their donation to even our nonprofit. And so, and that's the thing because it's a Schedule 1. So if you had safe banking passed too, that would be huge. Because then our dispensaries could stay alive. Our manufacturers could stay alive and keep growing and figuring out what the consumer really wants and needs and make it for them. But, but by tying their hands and not allowing them to do the typical write-offs that every other business gets to, they're strapped for cash. As much as we hear in the news, like, oh, millions and billions of dollars in the cannabis industry. Well, a lot of that is going to all the fees they pay and everything like that. So my heart goes out to the businesses as well. Like we need to keep these businesses going so that the consumers have product to buy and places to buy it.
And they can call you and get help.
Yes.
What to get. I love it.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining me. This has just been, a heartwarming conversation, and we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much for joining The Clear.